Facebook. So have you thought about, you're thinking, I really want to make a positive impact into the world. I'd love to be able to do something that changes lives, that, I've always thought of myself as a healer. I've always thought that I'd like to be able to do something that helps people, that really supports people where they're at. Well, I can see, I get requests all the time from people who are asking, is what you do, is that a work that, that maybe that's my work, like platonic touch and providing maybe cuddling or in a professional manner, like is that a method, or is that a modality that would be really helpful for me to do, to live out this calling that I feel of healing the world, or out there helping people, let's say. So here today I have Hannah Livengood, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, and she's here to ask questions that I know that many of you also have. So Hannah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm Hannah, and I live in Goshen, Indiana, which can be a gray, dreary place in the winter, and have some life experiences that have kind of caused me to need to be on a path of healing, physically and emotionally and mentally. And so have kind of come to a place where I'm feeling like I'm far enough on my own healing path, and I'm wondering what is my work in the world to encourage other people in healing paths, because I've had like several different kind of modalities that I've worked through that have really helped me. And I think to be able to lead other people in that path would be really good for myself, and for the world. The world is really in need of healing. I think both the earth and the people on the earth. So have just been kind of wondering what would be my work in the world in terms of healing. And so I think touch is a really important thing for everyone. It's a need that a lot of people have. And it's an unmet need for a lot of people, because we see like our ability to touch just in terms of if I have a partner, a romantic nature, that's where I get my touch. But I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't have that, or have that, and that's not enough touch for them. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, what is in the cuddle world? Tell me like what you do, Janet, and like kind of how that works.
Fantastic question. So she asked what I do, and I'm going to throw it back on you, Hannah. What do you think I do?
Okay, so I mean, for me, snuggling and cuddling is, something that I do with romantic partners, and for me, it's the vision of like being on the couch or in the bed, and spooning, or one person holding the other. So I could imagine that in a professional setting, there would be maybe like an intention set of like, what are we here for? And then, deciding like how physically that person wants to be touched, and then kind of going about that. Maybe like an hour-long session is kind of what I envision. I don't know.
You pretty much nailed it. Yeah. So the only thing that I would add on to that is that even though it's called like professional cuddling, it doesn't need to be cuddling. Cuddling can be really triggery and traumatizing for some people, because they're like, whoa. And some people actually sway away, like move away from cuddling, from touch, from getting platonic touch and going to professional, because they think it's cuddling. And I'm like, I don't want to cuddle. Like, that's not the kind of touch I'm looking for. So it can be, again, like you can imagine any kind of contact. The people that have a lot of social anxiety and feel like they are touch adverse because of, sexual abuse or physical abuse. And so for them, just like the act of maybe putting their hand on someone else's hand in an intentional manner, what they get to choose to do that can be, or like that could be all it can do. And so I like to say, I'm always talking about touch instead of cuddling, and moving away from using the word cuddling a lot, because again, like with one of my clients, like that's all they could do was the side pinky for the first 30 minutes. And we talked a lot about what this meant. So it can be just this. And then, imagine two bodies. It can be like two bodies all like tied up and wrapped up together. Like it can go from this all the way to that. And what I love that you said was, you sit down and you kind of discuss, have a conversation around like, what do you need? And what does this look like for you? What they say, no, I really want to feel relaxed. well, what does relax look like for you? And how do I play into that? And that's basically it, where we're really having conversations with another human being with full acceptance of that person, where they're at and who they are, and listening. And when they, they say this is what this is, and creating that dialogue if they don't have the words, and then moving forward and me checking in and saying, am I okay with that, with their request? Am I a yes to that? And so there's both people are deciding to be in this mutually respectful and consensual experience together. And it can be an hour, and I've had up to 10 hours. So
wow.
it can be, it's then both of you, again, it's a conversation. So both of you get to kind of figure it out together. What feels good to you, it feels good to me. I think that's the part that we're missing in our society is like, use your words. Talk about touch.
So part of it is learning how to dialogue about it, have conversations about it, which seems like would be really helpful for people then when they do go to their own interpersonal relationships, that they have the language and the conversation to use. Yeah, that's really cool.
And the willing to be vulnerable. That's what's really hard. A lot of my clients don't want to tell me what they want. Like they'd be like, well, what do you like? Or, what other people ask for? Because it's very difficult to say, like, I have a need. It's very difficult to know what I like. And then if someone were to offer something, it's very difficult to say, I don't like this. Like all of those things, it's very vulnerable. And I find that, like clients, it's that sometimes that's the barrier. That's the obstacle is, am I willing to be known and be seen?
So what do you do with those clients then who are saying, I'm not really sure? Do you say, do you give them kind of some options? Like it could be this and this and this?
So one of the, like I've done nonviolent communication training, and, when you really get down to like the parts where it's, what are your needs? What are your values? Like, what is it that you need right now? And they usually will say something very basic, like, I just need a rest. I'm tired. I'm overworked. I'm stressed. So it's like, okay, you'd like rest, maybe relief from your life. What does that look like? And so in my space, I have options. There's like a couch. There's what's called a love sack, which is a large foam bag. And then there is a place to lie down, like kind of a bed. So they'll immediately gravitate to one of those. And then we're there. And it's like, well, what would feel restful? Like what position? How would you like your body to be in what position? And they will then like, oh, I just want to lie down, or I want to be on my side, or like they end up getting into that position that feels good for them. And then I'll say next, like, okay, where do you see me? Like, how am I in relation to your body? And it's something very basic like that. Like, oh, well, I see you like right here in front, or I see you on my side, or I see us sitting, lying down on, maybe we're looking at the ceiling, or just both like body to body looking up the ceiling, and maybe our arms are touching. Like that's it. Some people want to stay quiet and they don't want to talk, and other people like to be really chatty and talk, and like that's how they relieve their stress. Like this is awkward because it can be a little bit awkward. So yeah.
So it seems like it's just kind of like creating a space for people and then kind of asking them questions to draw out what it is that they're needing, what they're looking for.
Yeah. In other words. And there's one tricky situation that I was debating if I wanted to mention it, where after I've seen a client for a while and they've been able to be successful in telling me like, this is what I want, this is how I want it, there will come a point with some of them when they'll say, okay, I get the process and I think I've developed enough vulnerability to tell you, in this session, I would like to now have you take care, like have you more intuitively just like guide the session. So I'm developing this kind of, it's like more of a supportive and guided session. So you have an empowered one where, again, you're empowered to ask for what you want. And then we can also do a much more supportive one, which then allows me to kind of take some of the, like, because I would say the reason for this is because some people are like, I'm just really tired of always taking care of everyone. I'm always tired of like having to orchestrate all the things that are in my life, either my family or at work. And so then I will take over. And before we even move into that though, we're still talking about, I'm still like getting information. They're still asking for what they want and I'm getting information. So like, tell me ahead of time, what do you hope to feel at the end of it? Or what is it that you hope to experience? And then I can create something for them that would be that. I mean, like that takes a little bit more work for me to do, but I'm definitely willing to create that experience.
And it sounds like you have to kind of get like really in touch with, be really intuitive about it and get in touch with your intuition. Yeah, that would be a challenge.
And then the other part of the challenge, is also inviting them to say, if anything feels uncomfortable or you're like not liking my suggestion, like I need you to speak up and say something. And so I think it helps to also have that relationship where they can say, nope, this isn't it. I don't like this. Like, I'm not feeling it, right? Like, and that also could be like, are you not feeling it because it's uncomfortable? Like it's a vulnerable uncomfortable, like it's bringing up things, or are you like not liking it because it's just like, no, it's not meeting. Even that, like, it's so elusive to understand, like really, as we peel the onion, what's really there, like what is it about this? And again, it always goes back to, let's have a conversation around it.
Yeah, that's really neat. In terms of like finding clientele, now you live in San Antonio? Yes. Okay. So I can imagine there's a lot of people in San Antonio. So the pool is a lot bigger. So I live in Goshen, which I don't know how many people are in Goshen, but not nearly as many as San Antonio. So like if I wanted to do something like this, I'm not even sure how I would go about like getting clients. What do you do there? What's your recommendation for that?
So, I've made myself known and I'm completely out with what I do, and I use my full name, and I've become that person in my community that does that thing. So like, and I think for me, people say, I like that I could get to know you ahead of time. I like that I could Google your name and like, there you are, and I can get to know you and know you as a real person. I think that is crucial. That's like number one. And then two, I do very minimal advertising. I mean, again, you're going to get what you get depending on where you advertise, but like I'm okay with advertising on Craigslist, which has its pros and cons. For me, it's been a big pro because there are people that are actively looking for massage and then moving more into the erotic work. Like that's a legit need. It's a legit thing out there in the world. But my belief around that is that they do that because that's all the only ways that we really can access touch. Like if you're going to do professional touch, you're going to go either therapeutic massage or erotic stuff. Yeah. And when there's nothing else, well, then you do one of those things. But like, because I know that they're looking, I realize I may fit a huge segment of those people who are like, well, I don't really want to do the erotic stuff, but like that's all that's available. And massage therapy seems still too disconnected, and I don't get to. It's not a two-way relationship. It's very one way. So I catch that group, and then just because it's becoming more and more known. I mean, we were talking about professional cuddling on Fox News like a few weeks ago. Like it's hit national. It's been on national radio. Like it's much more part of our culture. So there's still shame around, reaching out to someone, but I find that less and less as people realize. I mean, once you get to a point where you like, I'm dying without touch, it's touch deprivation. They don't care anymore. It's like, nope, I have no more shame around this anymore. If shame kept people from seeing erotic practitioners, then there would be no erotic practitioners. But obviously, it's like the need is so great. So the question I ask, if you think about Goshen, Indiana, that I would ask you is there a lively massage industry there? Like, are massage therapists? Yeah. Okay. And if you look under escorting, I know that's like, but like if you look under like people that other kind of touch practices, right? Erotic massage and escorting, like I guess it's a little taboo, but like if you do your homework and realize, oh my gosh, there's a whole lively business here. then there is a huge niche that's not being met in your community. Now, that I was going to say, those of you who are watching that don't know this, I do have a video where I talk about my journey, my life's journey, and how I got here. And Ken and I share something that we both come out of a Mennonite background. So I'm guessing you grew up in the Mennonite church. And I was in the Mennonite church for over 6 years and was a large part of my work on the local and national scale. And so I'm actually familiar with Mennonite men, mostly, like, you know, this being around the world, and I've had them contact me since doing this work. And it's especially in the religious community and deeply religious communities, touch is stigmatized as being something you can't trust, and it's scary, and but the men can't access it unless they're married. Like and if their spouses aren't touchy-feely, like the Mennonites come from a very Anglo-German culture. There's a lot of brokenness that I saw in that community. So
yeah, it's very taboo. And I've heard of like statistics where you know, if you get like a bunch of pastors together, like staying at a hotel or something, like the porn goes way up, and the pay-per-view porn that's used. And I think that just in the religious community, because platonic touch and, you know, sexual touch is such taboo, yeah, there's a huge need for it. I think like my fear with trying to start something like that here in Goshen would be that people wouldn't take it seriously. Like if I tell someone I'm doing this, they'll just be like, what, you're just gonna cuddle with people? Like, okay. So I'm trying to think how I would like frame it so that, because I want to be taken seriously, you know, if I would decide to do something like that.
So yeah, great question. I can talk, like using the word cuddling, again, use it sparingly. I'm cautious with it because, again, it's something that couples do, and we need to destigmatize it. But like I just know like there's a place for when and where to use that word. And like when I think about, so my business that I'm creating here in San Antonio is called Rehabilitative Touch Therapy. So for me, using the word rehabilitative touch or touch management, there's lots of like very healthcare words that we can use to start to explain, like, I am a touch specialist, right? Because we're legitimizing it. We're using words that reveal like there's no shame. Like we all need touch. Touches, you know, we think of it, touches for babies or lovers. Like there's not a lot in between other than a handshake, like proper handshake. So it's the language. And when you're able, like for me, I have many, like, hundreds of stories that I can share. Like once I start just throwing one story up, people just immediately connect and go, oh my gosh, yes. Like it's sharing our stories, it's sharing what we've seen, what I've seen. You may know people in your life right now that you think either have been like, I mean, touch survivor, like abuse survivors, right? Like where touch is completely inappropriate. Like that's a whole conversation that needs to be had. And this is one way in which we can bring touch back into their life that's meaningful. There's a lot of science around. They're doing the work of bringing people who are survivors, how they can actually change their brains so that they can receive touch again. That is under the neuroscience. Like there's a lot of really amazing research that's happening around that segment of the population. And then you have those who deeply need touch. I mean, again, there's just a lot that it's a mix of science with great storytelling and some just good practices, right? That builds trust. So people trust you, and therapists and doctors can also trust you.
Yeah, so it sounds like just the way you present it to people makes a really huge difference in how you're perceived. Yeah, how seriously you're taken. Yeah.
You're doing really great at reflective listening, so thank you.
I haven't had nonviolent communication training, but I would like to, so. Yeah, I guess like the other questions I have just like be more like on the business side of it. I mean, so it sounds like you have a repeat clients. And then just what advice like would you say to someone who is interested in trying to set up something like that, like in terms of business or otherwise? And what does your day look like? Like how many clients would you see in a day, like or in a week, or however often you see them?
Let's see. So setting up the business, really great question, because if you do any kind of trainings that are out there, they will train you, but they don't get you clients necessarily. I do like Cuddleist.com as a kind of a really good place to begin your training. And then there's like you get a certification. So it just help to have like a name behind a bigger name behind you. And you can be able to say like that you've done the thing. And so I don't know if I answered your business question completely there. I feel like maybe I didn't.
Like how do you structure it? So you said you have like some client that you would see like for an hour, or you've done longer. Like how do you know how much time to allot to them?
So I allow them to decide that. And
Okay.
really then it's also your comfort level. So if you feel like, okay, if you're an empath, for example, and some empaths are like, I can only see you for maximum 2 hours. Like I'm like wasted. I've given everything. I can't take it anymore. Like you would have to know yourself to know what's going to be harmful for you, like how far you can go. I don't consider myself an empath. Like I'm not that person, which I think is actually an advantage for me. So like last weekend, I had 9 hours in one day. That was okay. I mean, the next day I took, half a day off, like I was like
Yeah.
relaxing. But I have that ability, like I can just do that. And it's not very intense. So like for many of those hours, we were just watching TV, like watching like shows and stuff. So like, yay. It doesn't have to be, you have to like be working, like it can really be enjoyable, and it is meant to be, right? It's meant to be comforting and just fun and relaxing. But I'm still on the job, right? So I'm still creating that container, and I'm still, aware and conscious of what's happening. So that's that. So I guess in 1 week, like for me, a minimal, like I feel like I'm good week would be around 10 to 12 hours. Like if I can get that, I'm like, I'm good. Like that's like my minimum. I have worked up to like 35 in 1 week. That was a pretty intense week, but like that, I was okay with that. Again, that's the thing with this business, is that there's going to be really high weeks and there's going to be low weeks, just like with any kind of hustle job that you have out there where you're like, you have to hustle to figure it out. And also being available to be like kind of last minute. I think a lot of my clients are like, hey, I'd like to have a session with you today or tomorrow. Like, do you have availability? And the fact that I'm available 24 hours, maybe 24 hours, I'm thinking there are a few hours in the night but even then, like, have I worked all night? I have, right? So did I go to a hotel at 11 o'clock at night one time? I mean, I've had 700 hours. So with a good screening, good intuition, okay, 11 o'clock at the hotel, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And it was lovely. It turned out amazingly well. And that was a 2 hours. Have I left someone's home at 2 a.m? I have, like, but like, that's not something I'd ever recommend for a beginner. But, I've had 700 hours. So I get the idea of what I'm doing and understand. So it changes. I guess that the point is the practice changes. In the beginning, the boundaries and the structure may be a lot tighter. And then as you gain, you're empowered, as you gain agency and autonomy and and the whole experience, you're able to see, okay, these are my boundaries now, and they grow, and they just shift and they change, maybe not necessarily grow.
Yeah, like you could learn how to navigate different situations differently.
Right. Yeah.
Now, do you have like an office space, or do you do it out of your house?
So yes, I have two homes. I have a partner who has his home, and then I have like my home with my kids, and I have 4 children. Those of you who don't know, so like I let my kids be kids in their home. Like that was good for me. They stay there and they can tear that place up. I don't have to worry about it. And then I've used my partner's home to do the work. So it's nice to have like an office. Really, it's a studio. It stays clean for the most part. So yeah, I keep things separate.
Okay, that's nice. I mean, I would envision like for myself renting sort of like a loft officey space. Financially, I'm not sure how that would work for me right now, but that's kind of I wouldn't envision doing it out of my home, but possibly. Not sure.
And then think about also if you're wanting to reach out to people with disabilities, people in wheelchairs, people that have any kind of they're not able-bodied. Like so, like I think about like my space is not accessible for a wheelchair. There's 2 steps to the door, and so I've on my site I talk about that I do what's called an out call, so I can go to people's homes and I don't charge for travel fees for that. So
Oh,
I'm to meet them in their homes, especially that is it's also ADA compliant that I cannot charge someone to go to their place for any services. So if you're thinking as well as if you want to reach out to that community in particular, figuring out who your demographic is, figuring out who in your community are what I would call the most touch deprived.
cool. That's great food for thought. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like such beautiful work, and I really love the idea of it. So I'm gonna check out Cuddleist.com. And so do they have like is it like a certification, like a training that you take on the
Yeah.
Cuddleist.com? Okay.
So it is, yeah, it's online, and I do have a code that gives you 10% off. If that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, you do it online. A lot of it's again, it's for me, it seems very easy to access. It feels like it flows well. And then you're required to do 2 extra things, which is go to a cuddle party, and you live near Chicago.
I do.
Plenty of cuddle parties in Chicago. And then afterwards, you're also required to have a one-on-one session with someone who's already certified. And potentially you'll also, yeah, you'll do that one-on-one where you are the practitioner and the other person's a client, and they're there purposely to push your boundaries, to like kind of mess with you a little bit. During this whole time that you are doing the training, you get a mentor as well, so that there's someone there to kind of walk you through it and make sure that everything, that you're moving through the steps easily enough. Yeah, so it's meant to be comprehensive, it's meant to be helpful, meant to like get you going, and then for $40 a month you get to create a profile and put it on their website. And if that's something that you like, that's optional, but that allows you to have that visibility as well.
Have you gotten clients through that?
Oh yeah, so like Cuddle does their own advertising, and they do a lot of work in getting it out into the media. So whenever that happens, then people, of course, then look up like Cuddleist.com and like, where's the nearest partition to me? And that's a really great way to get people.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. I'm definitely gonna check that out. That sounds awesome.
Awesome. Any last questions?
I mean, I'd like to ask how much you charge, but I don't know if that's something you'd like to have on the. I can ask you privately if that's not something you'd like.
No, this is completely public. It's completely fine. So right now, until the end of the month, I'm still doing the standard fee of $80 an hour. And that has been the national standard. And Cuddleist, I think a month ago, they expanded it so that people could charge less if they needed to, depending on the area in which they're in. So some people went down to $60 an hour, and they opened it up so that we could also charge more. So because of my experience and because of I do a lot in a session, and I'm different than other cuddleists. So each person that does the cuddleist work, each person gets to develop their own practice and like what they're willing to do and what their boundaries are. And so each person looks different. So like what you choose to do would look really different than what I do, and that's okay. So my practice has developed well enough that I think I'm confident that I can move to $100 an hour for my empowered Platonic touch clients. And I am also considering going to 120 for my supportive Platonic touch clients. And I'll be creating some video content around the difference between those two. But I think the ones that are coming saying, I know what I want, I know how to ask for it, I'm going to ask for it, that feels good to have a little bit of a higher price than the national average. And then because of me. And then those who are like, you know what, I don't know what I want and I don't really want to ask for it. And can you help me please? Like that is more work.
That's more work for you to have to draw them out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
So that will, I'm moving up to 120. And then I'm also collaborating with therapists and doctors. And so I have some here in San Antonio that send me their clients, and I work with them with like in a triadic model. So we're doing this conversation, we go back and forth, we write notes together, like we're trying to figure out what's the best management plan for those patients and clients. And that's like also at the 120 because I do put more work. And they're much more, they're more difficult because we're dealing with trauma and we're dealing with like survivor issues.
Yeah, and you've got the documentation too, the more administrative part on your end. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Cool. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me.
Of course.
Sounds like, yeah, such a cool practice.
Yeah, and I'll also say that a lot of people have these questions, and so it's great to get it all out there, and hopefully it can be supportive for other people who are also considering doing this. And sorry for the beeping. All right, well, we're gonna stop the recording here. Thank you all again. Those of you who watch this live on Facebook, thank you so much for watching. And those of you who watch it later on YouTube and other mediums, thank you again for that. And so I'm just gonna say goodbye.